second keynote address. The topic of the keynote address is Forward SBMA 2030. World Gold Council has played a pivotal role in precious metals market reforms phase 1 since 2010, championed by the then IE Singapore, now renamed as Enterprise Singapore. It has also taken leadership in proposing a set of transformational agenda for the phase 2 in conjunction with the SBMA. So it would be befitting to give the privilege of presenting on this subject to the key representative of the World Gold Council in Singapore. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Shaokai Fan, Head of Asia Pacific, ex-China, and Global Head of Central Banks at the World Gold Council, to deliver the keynote address, Forward SBMA 2030. Over to you, sir.
It's a pleasure to be with you today at the 2024 APPMC, an event which has grown to become the premier gathering for the precious metals community in our region. This year marks several important milestones for our community. As I'm sure you're aware, as highlighted by the previous presentation as well, the gold price has reached a new all-time high earlier this year, prompting fresh attention from governments, central banks certainly, the media, institutional investors, and definitely the man on the street. Gold is again at the forefront of conversations as we juggle a tenuous macroeconomic environment, geopolitical uncertainties both near and far, and elections which may tip an already fragile global balance. Of course, the other major milestone that we're marking this year is the 30th anniversary of the SBMA. Under the leadership of CEO Albert Chang and the stewardship of its members, the SBMA has been a pivotal part of gold's success story in Southeast Asia. Looking back at the last 3 decades, we can see both the enormous transformation of the gold market, as well as the impact of the SBMA on gold's position in Singapore and in the region. The removal of GST on investment gold in Singapore, the establishment of a good delivery refinery here, have bolstered Singapore as a leading hub for gold trading in our region. By being one cohesive voice for our industry, the SBMA has led the charge for greater support and awareness of the gold market in Southeast Asia, placing Singapore in pole position for gold's next chapter. It is that next chapter of gold's story which I'd like to focus on today. In my estimation, there have been 3 transformational developments this century in the gold market: the creation of gold ETFs, the reemergence of central banks as net buyers of gold, and the momentous rise of gold consumption from major emerging market economies, almost all of which are in Asia. This is the first element for why Singapore is in pole position. Within 3 time zones to our east and 3 time zones to our west now lies the majority of gold demand today. In that same space also lies a significant portion of gold production. The center of gravity of the gold market has shifted east, with Singapore fortuitously placed as the potential fulcrum of this new balance. I had mentioned geopolitical challenges earlier on. I think everyone's familiar with them. Not only have these challenges made investors more aware of a need for hedging in their individual portfolios, it's also made nations more aware of hedging in their national portfolios. This is the second element for why Singapore is in pole position. The choice of vaulting location for official sector gold reserves is now a growing concern for central bankers around the world. Just as central banks look to the safety of New York during the Second World War, so too must they now look for new options in our current complex geopolitical environment. With its proximity to central banks who are actively buying gold, its firm commitment to political stability and the rule of law, its excellent and reliable transportation and logistical links, and perhaps most importantly, its reputation as a trustworthy partner to other nations of many different political persuasions, Singapore could serve as a truly viable alternative to London and New York as a hub for central bank gold vaulting. If progress is made in this area, it could attract significant amounts of liquidity into Singapore's gold market, making it a truly competitive global trading center for gold. You've now heard me use the phrase pole position several times to describe how Singapore is poised to lead the gold market of the future. And this is no coincidence. I chose this phrase on purpose. It is, of course, a racing term. And in just a few months, Singapore will be welcoming the 2024 Formula One Grand Prix to Marina Bay. Suffice it to say, we are not a country with a heritage of car racing, despite a few speedy taxi drivers. We are, in fact, a country of very strict speed limits and even stricter limits on space. After all, a few wrong turns in the circuit and you actually might end up in Malaysia. And yet, the Singapore F1 is an established and integral part of the annual F1 calendar. It draws in not only thousands of tourists, but thousands of professionals who attend the many conferences and events that dot the calendar during the F1 season. The F1 would not be in Singapore without the vision and strong support of the Singapore government to root it here. And notwithstanding recent political transgressions, the F1 is now a fixed element of Singapore's business environment. I bring this up because, like the F1, government support for growing the gold market in Singapore is a crucial ingredient for success. In recent months, the SBMA and several of its leading members have been focused on a body of work called SBMA Forward 2030, or Project Lion 2. We've analyzed the elements of success for leading gold centers around the world and have noted what Singapore must do to start competing on par with those centers. One important step is the attraction of more liquidity into our local market. As a leading storage center in the region already, I think Singapore has already made a lot of progress in this area. But as I mentioned earlier, the potential for foreign central banks to store their gold reserves in Singapore would be a game changer for the visibility and the level of liquidity in the local gold market. Another crucial step is to deepen our links with growing regional markets, many of which are represented in the room here today. Vietnam, which has just embarked on major reforms to liberalize its gold market, is approaching a potential inflection point in domestic gold demand, which may unlock enormous potential for that market. Indonesia, just to our south, with its huge population and growing incomes, is seeking to deepen the use of gold in its financial system. These opportunities, alongside many more in our region, further make the case for Singapore to play a prime role in the gold market of the future. The key, however, is gaining government support. The World Gold Council, the SBMA, and our partners in the industry are working hard to refine the elements of Project Lion 2 to get the attention of Singapore's policymakers. We will continue to articulate the case for why growing a gold market in Singapore can benefit this country, and why Singapore is uniquely placed to lead the gold market of the future, because I firmly believe that we are standing now in a moment of history where Singapore can lead the way forward. The center of gravity of the gold market has shifted. The need for a viable trading and storage center in Asia is now obviously apparent, and future demand for gold is now likely to come from many of our closest neighbors. That is why I believe Singapore is positioned to be a major global trading center for gold in the future. We already have the solid foundation laid down by the SBMA's hard work over the past 3 decades. We already have efficient financial markets, a respected legal system, incredible infrastructure, a good delivery refinery, a growing host of private sector storage facilities, and an organized voice for the gold industry here. The ingredients of success are there, but the hard work lies ahead. Being in pole position does not guarantee a victory, but together, with your support, we are all racing forward toward that checkered flag. I hope to achieve it together with you, with your support and guidance today. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shaokai.